Sometimes the answers to life's most pressing questions can feel unclear, even when we are trying to listen to the Spirit and do what God is telling us to do. I experienced this the most when I was chronically depressed. I didn't feel anything. I didn't feel like I was hearing anything. I had a hard time trusting my intuition and was pretty much just going off of what I was taught was right, was wrong. But the clarity that I feel like I have now, and I still think I have a long way to go, is so much better than it was when I was depressed. I think there are so many things that can interfere with our intuition in this world we live in, and those are some of the things we're going to talk about today, what they are and what we can do about it.
Yes, welcome everybody.
Welcome.
Good to be here.
So the first thing we're going to talk about today is how these interferences in our current world environment that have not been the case in previous generations, such as EMF interference, electronic frequency. We are electronic beings. We're electric. We function on electricity. And so when you have all of these Bluetooth, internet, phones, all these things, they do interfere with the body and then, of course, the spirit's ability to receive signals from a higher power.
There's two different ways to look at this, and we're going to address both. One is from a physical perspective, and one is from a spiritual. But they're both important because we are
connected.
Yeah, we're composite beings. We are both physical and spiritual. And I know some people talk about the spiritual, that's energy, electric. Well, if you look at the spiritual side as the soul is a bundle of energy, a bundle of electricity, for lack of a better comparison, then when you say the physical world and all the different radio signals, magnetic waves, and that we're constantly being bombarded, it makes sense. That will cause interference, disruption in the normal flow.
So what is something we can do about that, or a few things? I know I've got EMF blocking devices. I wear one. I've got them all over my house. There's only so much we can do to get away from them. But you'd mentioned something.
Oh, yeah. When I go camping, there might be one cell tower nearby, but the majority of it is no radio signals unless you bring them yourselves. And I've noticed that for myself, whenever I go camping in one of these places, I sleep really well. I mean, I can sleep 8-9 hours. Whereas when I'm home in my apartment here, surrounded by all these devices, I'm only getting 6 hours, maybe at most. And then I end up having to take cat naps throughout the day. But the sleep cycle was definitely interrupted. And that's also another reason why my bedroom has very few devices nearby. The only thing that's there is a clock radio. But I don't put my cell phone in that room. I don't put anything else in there just to try and limit the signals. You can measure these type of signals. They sell all kinds of devices that do so. But the easiest way that I have discovered to hear electricity is if you go near these, like the high powered electric watt towers. We have these on the way to where I work. And whenever you're driving past that section of road, if you have your windows down, you can literally hear the buzzing and the static in the air from all of the electricity that is just leaking off of the towers. They're like 50 feet away, and you're still feeling that residual.
Yeah. Something that I have realized over the years, I was vaccinated as a child, but most people are at least aware that there's some metals that are in some of those vaccines. If you're putting metal into your body like that maybe wouldn't have been as prevalent otherwise, you're going to be making yourself into a device, more or less, that will be more affected by electronic signals. Just frankly, that's just kind of how it works. And I think any one of us who have experienced that don't know any different, but it's just something to consider. This is part of the world we live in, something that most of us didn't choose. It was done as a child. There are chelating therapies. I've never really done one. But again, I think just getting out into nature more, even just, there's so many things going on, especially in the urban areas, energetic-wise. There's so many people. There's just a lot going on that can affect us that's not related to us in our little houses. We can feel the collective energies of a city. And there's more than one good reason to go get forest therapy, as one of my friends calls it, on a regular basis. Get out of the city. Going outside and touching the ground can be helpful. Barefoot in your own city or
Grounding,
town,
yes.
grounding's good, but you'll get so much more out of it if you make a concerted effort to go somewhere where there's not as many people and clear out, especially if you're trying to get answers to some pressing questions. Going somewhere like that where you're not going to get as much interference.
Right. So don't judge the fisherman sitting on the stream just casting. He's just sitting there doing nothing. Right, exactly. Just sit there doing nothing, away from all the electronics and resetting your body. That's basically what you're doing. This goes into sleep cycles, given whatever state you're in, but the direction that you sleep can affect you. I forget what the exact science is, if it's north, south, east, west. But if you're having difficulty sleeping at night, sometimes just changing the direction of your bed puts you in a different polarity as far as the magnetic field of the earth and will actually improve sleeping. I did that. I was having difficulty sleeping. I heard about that study, so I did it. I just rotated my bed 90 degrees, so my head and my feet were facing a different direction. And lo and behold, I started to sleep better. Just something simple as that. And it really brings out the fact that we don't think that sort of thing affects us. But when you make a simple change, and that simple change demonstrates firsthand a difference, then it's like, oh, wow, there might actually be something here that we need to look into that's actually affecting me.
Right. And sleep. If we're not getting a lot of sleep, if we're feeling like a zombie throughout the day or keeping awake through stimulants like caffeine, you're not going to be at your best to be able to receive intuition. It's just you're either wired or tired, and your body and spirit can't optimally function that way. There's a reason we are encouraged to pray both before bed and when we rise. And I think that protection when we sleep and having that rejuvenating sleep, I will often pray, help me to have rejuvenating sleep. Or rather, I'm grateful, Father, for this night when I'm going to receive rejuvenating sleep. Thank you. Because I try to pray with gratitude, even before I've received what I've asked for, essentially. But again, it's so much easier to feel in alignment and be able to hear God speaking to us when we're not exhausted beyond unbelief. And so many of us are just grinding day to day to day to day and just doing what we have to do to provide for our families or whatever it is. It's a hard world that we're living right now. And it would take a lot of tuning in and intuition to be like, how can I do this better? But so many of us are in that grind so badly and so deeply that we can't even hear the solutions that God might have for us.
When it comes to prayer, God says, step away, slow down, go to a quiet place where nobody else can see you, and just be quiet. If you look at the journey of Jesus and the apostles, he didn't run. They visited from town to town. They journeyed. Nowhere in the Bible does it say Jesus did a marathon and raced the disciples to get to the next town because he wanted to see how fast. No, just the opposite. So God is patient. God has all of eternity. He's not bound by time. We might be bound by time, but one of the keys is to go above that.
Yeah, utilize the time we have most effectively in doing the things that he has all the answers. So if we're so distracted by all of these things, and you can think of all the things that distract you throughout the day. I mean, anyone want to raise their hand and say social media, please? Television, whatever addiction, but those all distract us from the things that would help us to hear God more intuitively. Making the concerted effort, the choice to distract yourself for a minute, disengage.
Disengage, good. That's good.
Make more of a conscientious and consistent mental physical effort. And it doesn't have to be a lot, just the intention of, okay, I'm tuning in. I'm going to just stop for 1 minute and talk to you, Lord. I only have 1 minute, but I'm going to use it to talk to you. Sometimes that's all it takes. There's a few of those throughout the day. So with that said, fight or flight. And I have been told by one of my mentors recently that I am pretty much in a perpetual state of fight and flight. And I'm like, yeah, I can see that. It's, I think, how a lot of people operate. But especially someone who likes to go like I do and get things done and make goals and then really pushing for those goals, doing these podcasts, it can be exhausting. And being a mom, and you get yourself in this constant state of, I have to do all these things or I'm going to die or I'm going to fail or I'm going to fall behind. And so you're constantly running, emotionally, of course. I mean, physically too. But you can't feel the spirit when you're constantly in that fight or flight. And so my mentor suggested, and I think this is so good, he asked me, are you on the right path right now? And I was like, no, I don't know. And he said, ask the Lord to put you in a parasympathetic state so you can rest and repair. And so I did. I said, in the name of Jesus Christ, please put me in a parasympathetic state. And then he says, now ask again, are you on the right path? And I asked again, am I on the right path? And I got a solid yes. Okay, cool. But when you find yourself going, yeah, no, I don't know. There's usually some interference in there that's keeping you from getting that clear answer, right?
Even from my own experience, and this might be a youth versus old age thing in my case too. Especially when you're younger, you're very hyper, you're out there learning, you're out there experiencing. And when I first started working in the corporate world, I enjoyed it. I was traveling, flying places. But at the end, after 8 years or so, I was working 60, 70, 80 hours a week.
Not sustainable.
No vacations.
Right.
And that was one of the deciding factors when our company got downsized. And I just said, I'm done. I realized I needed to slow down. So then I made the change. And that was one of the reasons I became a teacher. In fact, this morning I was just sitting there talking to God, and I'm just like, man, I'm really getting lazy. I'm just sitting here doing nothing, and I'm perfectly fine with that. Is that wrong? Am I lazy? Oh, I was having that type of a conversation with him. Of course, then, Jennifer sends me a text. Hey, you want to record? So I'm like, oh, okay, sure. Why not? I know we're almost at extremes, but when you have that calm feeling, you allow God to work in you so much more readily, so much more easily, because you're not really expecting anything.
Well,
I'm like,
and I
it's so simple. But
what people don't realize is that is one of the most basic and most important things that we can do is to tune in and be like that pray always scripture.
Right.
For real, be tuned in so that when God says stop or slow down, really it means to stop or slow down. But I have this deadline, stop or slow down. Or speed it up, you gotta go. Okay, I'll go. You'll be where you need to be, when you need to be there, and doing the things you need to do if you tune in to where you're supposed to be, how fast you're supposed to do it, when to stop. And because so many people, they just ignore that stop sign. And they keep going, and then they end up getting sick. Or we talked about that with Sarah in a previous podcast, why am I so sick? It's true. You will waste time if you don't listen to God's timing for you. He's trying to help you.
Here's another little secret that I think people don't realize. How often we say we feel that time is speeding up. There are instances where time speeds up and everyone's like, oh, God is speeding things up. He's speeding things up. Well, God can do the opposite. God can slow things down. And I've had that happen to me before where I've had to have something done and I'm like, well, I only have an hour. That's not nearly enough time to do what I'm doing. I just say, God, I need more time. So I'll just sit there and work, not even look at a clock. And then when I get done, I'll look over and realize, wow, it's only been an hour? It should have been 3 or 4. So literally, time slows down. And if you want to take advantage of that, that's another thing to tune into. There's been times when I've been in a meeting that I really thought was boring, and I go, God, speed this up. Just accelerate this. Let me jump through the end, please. So, yeah, he can go both ways, and use that to relax.
Or you can do that with sleep. You can do that with sleep, too. We've talked about that. I got 3 hours to sleep. I need this to be 8. Can you make this feel like my body's gotten 8 hours of sleep?
And he can, and he does.
So the next one I wanted to talk about that can interfere with our intuition is numbing effect of drugs and herbs, because herbs can be numbing too. We won't mention which ones, but you know what they are, as well as psychedelics. They rewire the brain in what I would call horrendous ways that are really hard to undo. So, yeah, I understand that a lot of people who were in my position, chronically depressed, you got to do what God tells you to do. If God is telling you you need to be on this right now, then by all means, but let it be temporary. Even a Tylenol can interfere with your intuition because it numbs feeling. It doesn't just numb your body's feeling. In other words, so if you're numbing your body, your spirit is going to be numbed as well because they're connected. Even just a Tylenol every day, it's going to interfere with your ability to feel the spirit because you're more numb. Additionally, a lot of the pharmaceutical drugs that are created for depression, anxiety, they kind of make you not care. So there's less of an urgency or a desire to tune into God. It's just the nature of the beast. That's one of the reasons that I want to provide so many tools on this podcast to help people to wean off of those or avoid them altogether, because I couldn't feel anything when I was on them. And I wasn't even on a lot. I think I was taking 15, 20 mils. A lot of people take a lot more than that. It makes life more bearable. But again, it's just avoidance, distraction in the end. Okay? So I'm not saying don't ever take it, but it's just kind of the nature of how it is.
My one friend was very addicted to pain medicine.
Yeah, that's a big deal right now.
He had taken medicine so much that in order to numb any pain, he was up to, I think, 15 Tylenol at once, literally taking the bottle and chugging a bottle of Tylenol because he said 2, 3, he couldn't feel it anymore. It wasn't enough. His body had become so adapted, so numb to that the medicine had less and less effect. So he had to just keep taking more and more and more.
Well, in respect to those in particular,
prescription painkillers,
all of that category, not Tylenol necessarily or ibuprofen, they won't necessarily do this, but the other ones, I asked a friend about this because she had a sister who was on it. She wanted to understand what her sister was going through and why she couldn't get off of it. And what she found out was that when you take these pain medications, a normal body compensates for its own pain fairly well. So it's got its own painkillers that will go in. There's some kind of receptor cell, and it'll come in with its own cell or chemical. I'm not sure exactly how it works, but it'll come in like a puzzle piece and fit in there and numb some of that pain for you. Your own body can do this. When you take oxycodone, for example, it changes the shape of that receptor so that it can fit into that cell and then stop the pain. Well, when you stop taking the oxycodone and maybe you're not in pain anymore, but the shape of that receptor cell has changed so that your own body's ability to connect to it has been destroyed. Your own pain tolerance is way lower because your own body can't compensate anymore. It can't fit in like a puzzle piece. Only the oxycodone can. And so you feel like you have to be on it in order to feel even normal and without pain. So you might not even be in pain, but you might think you're in pain when you're not even in pain. It's kind of freakish, and there's a movie about the evil people that created this. I'll put that in the notes. I haven't seen it. My mom told me about it. It sounds way too disturbing. But that's it in a nutshell. There's people who are inspired and amazing who create pharmaceuticals that help this planet. I think herbs are the better way to go, but then there are people who are inspired by very dark things, who are really only concerned about money and will do anything to get it. And something as addictive as this, that's as widespread as it is and as needed, quote unquote, with all the surgeries that occur and so forth. I mean, they handed it out to me like it was candy when I had my baby.
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't even need this. I could have sold it on the black market if I'd wanted to for a lot of money. I threw it out in the trash, but it's kind of, it's not good. So even just a Tylenol, even just antidepressants, those are all numbing. Okay.
Also be aware of these effects with somebody you might know. There was somebody I was very close to, and they became addicted to prescription painkillers. And the one painkiller actually had a warning not to go beyond like 6 months because confirmed mental changes can happen. That's some of the known side effects. And it turned out this person kept getting more and more drugs. Anytime a doctor would tell her no, they would go get a new doctor, wouldn't tell them their history so they could prescribe more. And told us that they weren't doing it anymore till we went in and opened up the closet and saw that they had about 500 bottles that they had stored up, and that they were just, over the years, that person changed. Their personality changed. They were no longer that same person. Without further research or whatever, but I'm point positive, as are some of everyone else who knew them. said it was that pain medicine because they were on it, they were addicted, and over the years, it just ate away and literally changed their brain chemistry.
Right.
And,
When
and it's
you are
sad, but
doing things that abuse your body like that, you are literally opening yourself up to spiritual things as well that can then
yes.
change you. There's a part of me that wishes people could see, like, really what's going on, because if you could, you'd be like, I'm never going to do that, or they'd be terrified to watch on a spiritual level what is happening when you're doing this stuff. It's so horrifying. Like, I don't want to tell you, horror movie, but if you're letting that stuff in by your choices willfully, there is a way back. But it makes it harder and harder and harder the longer you're on that path. And you're continually opening yourself up through abusing your body and making it hard for your body to protect the spirit inside, or the vessel that you're carrying the spirit in. It gets all covered up.
On a spiritual side, particularly if you believe in angels and you're devoted to angels, be aware that angels witness all of that. So anytime, even though you can't see it happening, they do. There was one saint, their angel came to them, and they said their angel literally could not approach. They had their hand over their mouth and nose, and the angel looked at them and said, "You smell so horrible." That was the sin.
Interesting, like a spiritual sense.
And then she said, "That's how I understood what I did was so wrong." And of course, then she went and fixed it. But seeing her angel in that state,
I still love you.
Still love you.
Even
it's
if you
still my
stink.
job. Imagine go changing a baby's diapers. You might not like the smell, but you're still going to do what you have to do. Just be aware that they don't like it.
We'll all see the clarity of the good and the bad and the ugly someday, and that's why there's an atonement and a loving God and Jesus Christ. They love us so much, and this is all for learning and growth. But let's get out of these spaces where we're blurred and unclear faster so that we can get on with better things and to have a more joyful life. That's why we're here. I wanted to quickly talk about how sometimes I felt like I thought I knew what I was going to do, and I felt generally pretty good about it, and I start down this path, right? I'm going to use the example of my second husband. I felt like I was supposed to marry this guy and didn't ask too many questions. I asked a few vague ones because I really wanted to marry him, and I was like, cool, I'll marry him. And I'm not sure if things changed or if it was never a good idea to begin with, but ultimately it ended up not being a good thing. He was not a good spouse to me. It ended very quickly. And I think what happens sometimes is that God will see us going down a path and he's going, oh, shoot, she thinks that she's listening to me. She thinks that's me that told her to do that. And he'll call a powwow of my angels or angels in general, be like, guys, she really has good intentions, but we got to stop her. She thinks that she's listening to me. And clearly we know that this is not going to be good. We don't want her to end up 20 years down the road married to this guy. So I really think that there were angels who intervened, who made sure that that marriage did not last. And was I happy about it at the time? No, I was devastated. But I'm really glad it ended as fast as it did. And I think that the Lord will intervene for us when we're going down a path that we thought was good. But he's like, honey, no, stop. Because he knows we're trying. And then there's the other hand where sometimes we willfully or go, la, 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 I don't hear you. I don't want to ask. I'm just going to do what I want. And we start going somewhere. I would say 100% of those cases, he will let us go down that path and suffer the consequences for the sake of learning and growth with a hand outstretched like, you ready now? You ready now? You ready to come back now? Anytime. But the farther we go down that path, the harder and harder and harder it is to hear. It's like we're getting farther and farther away. When he's willing, he's right there, and we can be as close as we'll let him at any given time. Like we're ready to turn around, come back, he'll be right there. But if we continually walk down a path of darkness or of a poor choice, it's going to get fainter and fainter and fainter, where you get to the point where I've heard women say at times concerning an encounter with the opposite sex, where they ended up doing something that maybe was a little immoral, okay? You know what I'm talking about. And they'll say, but it felt so right. It's interesting where you can get to that point, and was it because it was really late and they were tired? Was it because they were going, la, 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 I'm listening to my hormones and emotions now? Or could it be that they were under the influence of something? Often that's the case. It felt so right when I was under the influence of alcohol. But Ultimately, there's times when it's a false positive. We're wanting it to be this, and we create an environment where we can say yes and feel quote unquote good about it without feeling shame at the time.
Spiritual binding. By our very nature, our spirits desire to be bound to others. The more you search out somebody, the closer you are, the more your soul binds to their soul, which is why if you're moving closer and closer to God, your soul binds more and more to God. The more you bind to Him, the easier and easier it becomes to listen to Him, to hear Him, and to do what He wants you to do. And the more you bind yourself otherwise, now, I'm going to just say, if you bind yourself to evil, or you don't want to bind yourself to God, you move away from God, you start cutting those bindings. And the same holds true when it comes to people. And this is something I don't think people understand. Like if two people perform an act that they shouldn't, they are still binding their souls. That act, even though you're using the physical body to perform the act, because a lot of people say, oh, it was just physical, there was nothing spiritual. Actually, there is. So,
the sexual act is a ritual.
Yes.
It's not just a physical ritual, it's a spiritual ritual as well.
Right. And anytime you do that, you are binding yourself to that other individual. In terms of pornography, if you are watching that, just through the act of watching it, you are binding your soul to the people that you're watching, and vice versa. We're so interconnected on a spiritual level, and you have to be aware of that. And that's what makes it easier or harder, because the more you move away from center or move away from the good, that then becomes your new normal, and you start to struggle and have difficulties.
And sometimes people don't even recognize it for a while because they're quote unquote happy in that lifestyle, but I don't know that I've ever seen it not catch up to someone eventually.
It always does, and this is the other part of this. There's only two forces. You have God and you have Satan. And you must understand, Satan, of his own free will, chose to rebuke God. Basically, he told God, I don't want anything that you offer. That's why if you are rejecting God, moving away from God, people grow closer to Satan because they're more in line with his viewpoint.
And that does not mean you're a bad person.
Right. You just have to realize that because he is very deceptive. And the person that's easiest to deceive is yourself.
Ooh, I should quote that. The person who's easiest to deceive is yourself. Wow. I don't think I've ever heard that, but that rings very true. My whole body's like, yeah. Wow.
That's what I tell my friends. Satan still keeps attacking. And it's like, it's in the Bible. God has already said he loses. Why does he keep doing this? Because he is the ultimate deceiver. Even though he knows he is going to lose, he has convinced himself that he is going to win, that he has a chance.
You're telling me there's a chance.
Right. He has believed his own lie. The human body, the human spirit, by our very creation, is designed to align one direction or another. And that's where the concept of free will comes in. It's not that we can do anything. No, the concept of free will is you get to freely choose. Do you want the gifts God is offering you or not? If you choose the not, then you're going to be with the people that rejected him.
I have an analogy that just popped into my head. So there's a musical thing that happens with sound waves. And when I'm playing with a student, for example, or in an orchestra for that matter, but a lot of times with a student because they're still learning, they're not quite as in alignment yet. I'll be playing a chord, maybe I'm on a C and they're on an E, and you got that third, right? If you're playing it in tune, you get this beautiful hum. It's like this sound in the background that is a result of these two notes coming together and aligning beautifully. And it's creating the other notes of the triad, and it's just gorgeous. You can hear it come together and it's like, oh, there it is. And when it's not in alignment and their wave isn't coming together well with your wave, you'll hear this. You know, especially musicians, you can tell like a good group from a bad group. It's in the feeling, it's in the cohesiveness, it's in that balance. And music has power behind it, and it can be used for good or for evil. But when you're using it for good, and you have that alignment, it transcends. There's something about that vibration that is so healing to the body and spirit. But when it's out of alignment, it's really hard to listen to. It's just like, you know? And that's like you in alignment with God versus, no, I'm going to go my own way. And it's just not. He'll say, well, okay, well, we'll keep practicing. Can you meet me where this will sound good together, please? But the true principle in just a very simple scientific musical term.
Good analogy. For many years, I deceived myself. I thought I was doing the right thing. I had this false belief system. I still thank my guardian angel to this day. I'm like, I don't know how you put up with me in those years. Thanks for not giving up on me. I appreciate it. I really do. Because I did some really horrible things that at the time I thought was fine. I thought I was doing the right thing. I was justified, and it turns out I wasn't. Now that I'm back on the right path, now that I'm finding God hasn't stopped the lessons. I feel like a total idiot because every time I start to learn something, God's like, well, look at it this way. And he blows my mind. I mean, no matter how into God I become, no matter how much he teaches me, no matter how much I learn, he shows me how much I don't know.
So I think the lesson to that is to don't think you're so smart that you stop listening. Like, I know enough. I've read the Bible, I've read the Book of Mormon, I know the doctrine forwards and backwards. Okay, I know some people who are so secularly smart that they stop listening to the Spirit. They know too much. So I think that's a dangerous place to be. Don't think you know so much that you don't need God no more. We all do.
Right. Some people that, for instance, have learned Catholic Cateism, they know it off by heart. They know the rules, the regulations, and they're like, I am not listening to anybody or anything else. Here's what's written. I'm going to follow this to the letter. I'm not going to deviate. Therefore, I am guaranteed to make it.
When there's probably God is sending them people who might have information that he wants them to understand, but they're not even willing to listen. Yeah.
Right. But you know what? That's okay, because maybe that's their role. And to be honest, I have learned a lot from listening to those people. But as far as from their perspective, this is why you don't judge. That might be their job. Stubborn, from my opinion, even coming onto this podcast. Some of my friends questioned, rightfully so, what am I doing with a Mormon? But that's part of my personality. And even my own family have said, you're like Sweden. You never take sides. You always try and hear everybody's opinions and try and find a middle ground for things. I accept that. That's part of my calling. That's part of my job. I'm very open. I listen to everybody and I just make my own judgments. I still have my core faith. I still have my core beliefs, but I'm also willing to listen to others, learn from others, and see how God is acting in their lives and how it has effect on mine. It's a big puzzle. I see the world as a giant tapestry. I see everything being stitched together. I see the big picture, or at least I try to.
Yeah. I think there's also spiritual diplomats as well. You'd mentioned several times about core beliefs, core religious beliefs, and so forth. I wanted to end with one more thing that can get in our way, our core limiting beliefs. So the definition of a core limiting belief, according to Anne Shoemaker, in effect, limiting beliefs are thoughts, convictions, or opinions that we believe to be absolute truths, which leave no room for anything else, right? That hold us back in some shape or form. As a result, they prevent us from growing, achieving our goals, taking risks or new opportunities, or becoming the people we want to be. These beliefs can be about yourself, like I'm not this or I am that. The world, how it works, like everybody's like this, everybody's like that. The world's a horrible place, the world's a good place. Or life in general and how it works. Like, this is how it is. Or I should never do this. Or I should always do that. We are trying to identify limiting beliefs. So the word should, and we've talked about this in other podcasts as well, which is such a shameful word. There's so much shame oozing out of the word should. And so I think a lot of people mix up the religious foundations versus religious culture. And there's a difference.
Right.
And some people are so fixated on what's always been done and the culture and what's always been said, when frankly, even leaders in churches can make mistakes or say things that are human and maybe were partly inspired but not quite said right or misinterpreted. There's just so many things. And the way we believe about ourselves, especially if you struggle with mental illness, we've talked about this again before, how many lies you believe if you are mentally unstable, as I was. You are full of it. You are full of it. And so these core limiting beliefs, which can come from childhood, can come from things your mother said to you, friends said to you, the way you were treated, if you were bullied, if that's your foundation, and everything else is built upon it, it can really distort reality. And so if you're making decisions based on these core limiting beliefs and you're not willing to allow the Lord to come in and heal those things or help you reassess what you understand about what you've been taught with more clarity and with the pure truth that God wants you to know, you're going to continue to struggle. One person that comes to mind, the entire time that I've known her, she's just lived in shame. And she's a super, super good person who lived the letter of the law at church. We do this is how it should be. I would say she's usually pretty depressed and miserable. She's just so fixated on all of the shoulds that she isn't giving room for God to... I know she listens to God, but there's just so much more that he could do for her if she would just relax.
Yeah.
Just open up the possibilities that maybe you don't understand things the way you think you do. And I had to be knocked upside the head and beaten up to a pulp before I would go, okay, maybe I'm not getting this right. Because I was so stubborn. Oh my gosh. And I thought I was doing it all right. I thought I was so much better than everybody else. And I had it wrong. Oh my goodness. And not that the foundational things were wrong, but the way I was living it in my life and how I judged other people and just how rigid I was not. It just was not. It was not a recipe for a joyful life or a life where God could speak to me and inspire me and move me and help me to be and do and become what he wanted me to do and be and become.
Same thing happened in my life too. I was so far down that road and I was very stubborn, and God's even told me, he's like, that's one of the greatest gifts about you is how stubborn you are. Once you become fixated on a course, nothing stops you. You won't deviate. You will just continue until you solve it. And he said, but that's also the two-edged sword, because if you're stuck on the wrong course, he has to intervene to get me to change direction because I'm so stubborn. It goes both ways. For people out there listening, when bad things happen, it might just be God trying to nudge you, to try and get you to go in the right direction and move away from a worse situation. Especially if you're coming out of depression, or once you realize that you are suffering and that something is wrong, don't be afraid if something bad happens. Because number one, Satan could be doing that to try and keep you depressed, to keep you off the right path. And number two, God could be using that same situation to bring good, to bring you back to where you need to be. And I've had that happen before. I get stuck behind a really slow driver. This person's doing 30 miles per hour in a 60 mile per hour road. Come on, I want to get home. Been a long day. 10 miles down the road, we come to a stop because there's been an accident. And it kind of clicks. Like if I had left on time, that could have been me. God sent this slow driver to slow me down so I didn't get caught up in the accident. God could be doing that with you. He might be seeing that you're going down this really negative path. You're moving farther and farther away. And God says, like, well, if this continues, this really bad event's going to happen. I don't want that. So he'll
Or it's kind of like a path of no return if you get too far down or really hard.
Right. So he'll just send these little things, and what you might think are horrible at the time.
Yeah.
But those things might divert you from what is really bad. And that's part of the life
Or just give him
review.
time to get a hold of you. Like, hello, slow you down. So are you listening yet?
Sometimes there could be deep meaning. Sometimes it could be, I just don't want you to go down that road right now because the timing isn't right. I just want you to spend more time with me. So I'm going to slow you down so you think about me more.
Yeah. When I was at the end of my marriage and trying to decide what to do, should I get a divorce? Should I leave? Should I stay? And I had all these temptations. And I remember seeing in my mind a day vision, fire everywhere. Just fire surrounding me everywhere, getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And there was a spot where I could see, you need to leave now. You need to go through that. There's space, you can get out. But it was like closing, you know how fires do?
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's time to go, Jen. But I felt like God was purposefully putting fire in my way. It was hellfire too, but I felt like it was also being utilized by God to push me towards the only exit that was left. And I wasn't sure what that was. And I had to really dig deep to be like, where am I going? I don't want to run into the flames. But I feel like that is often what God will do, is he will basically close off every other option or make it undesirable so that there's like one way left. Go, honey. It's right there. Fire everywhere else except there's your out. But you need to move. You need to move now. It's closing.
We all have our free will, but God created every single one of us for heaven. He created all of us to be loved by him. He wants that for all of us. No matter, again, what happens, you just got to align yourself back to God, trust in God. Again, don't be afraid to move forward.
So there is another episode that I refer to fairly often, number 8, where I talk about different types of intuition. Different people hear the Spirit differently, getting more acquainted with yours, and realizing that God is talking to you all the time. You might just not understand what your language is yet. So that would be a good one to refer to or review. And I kind of wanted to end with this quote. I think it's really beautiful. It's talking about imbalance versus balance, but it was by Pedram Shojai. And I heard him in an interview. He says, our society is lazy. I think that's kind of a blanket statement. But in general, we're working like crazy, and yet we're lazy about the things that actually matter, right? That's, I think, what he's trying to say. We have a weird relationship with sins and imbalance. I truly believe that esoteric Christianity is one of the most powerful paths to liberation, but I think that most people are swirling in the toilet bowl of middleman religion and being told what to think or what to believe or how to be, and having zero experience of the things that would actually transform them. And I thought that was pretty profound. I liked his toilet bowl analogy, but I do think that people who make these comments about, well, I don't want to be held down by all these rules or religion, it's just really constrictive, and I'm thinking, I don't feel that constriction. It's all in how you look at it. To me, it gives me a lot of freedom, but they're often the ones who are being controlled by the world around them, and they're not seeing it. Do you not see that you're doing what the world wants because you don't have something that's grounding you other than your own self, your own voice, and then everything else that's influencing you around you? Angels that are trying to talk to you, and demons and spirits and all of the other things. It's an
imbalance. Yeah, it's an imbalance between the physical and the spiritual.
So again, getting back to that quiet, finding ways to get quiet, finding ways to find balance, finding ways to clear, right? It's going to be an individual path for you, but in our society, it really does have to be intentional. In a lot of cases, it's not going to just be there because of all the things we've talked about today. The interferences in our environment, in our world, in our spirit, in our physical bodies, even clearing our bodies of all of the toxins in it, which we've talked about regularly. But you have to take that intentional effort in order to hear more clearly. And as you do, it will get more and more clear. So don't be discouraged if you feel like, I don't hear much now, or I've never heard anything. I think you do, you just don't realize it. And getting to where you recognize it, and then you can tune in more easily on a regular basis. That's the ultimate, right?
Exactly. Ultimate goal.
I'm telling you, I was numb, didn't feel like I heard anything for years. Years and years and years. I'm by the seat of my pants is what I felt like, doing the best I could. But if I can do it, and I can get more clear, which I'm still a work in progress, you can do it too.
Agreed.
So thank you again, John. Appreciate you being here today.
Always.
This is the Overcome Depression podcast. We will see you next time. If you are new to this podcast, please go watch all of the hashtag introduction videos first, and then consider downloading the Overcome Depression workbook, Links in the description. The content in this podcast is based on my own personal beliefs, is for informational purposes only, and is not intended to substitute for medical advice, diagnoses, or treatment. Please refer to the full legal disclaimer in the description.